the Second Congress of the International Social Movement, the Morality Movement. Thank you very much. Sit down, please. Thank you that you have found an opportunity to come here in that not very blissful time to demonstrate our love for God and our desire and commitment to become moral. Thank you. And I also take the opportunity to thank all those who participated in the organization of this event, because I know how hard and responsible it is. Thank you very much. I would like to say now that I want to dedicate my speech today to God. But then I thought that maybe I take a lot on myself. And the only thing I can do is to reveal a very small aspect of this global concept. We are living in such a time that when you start talking to people about God, they have very similar reactions. They try to step aside. Some people even have negative feelings. Perhaps people think that I will start to preach, so they try to go away. But I'm glad that you have not yet gone. We are living in a dual world. And so, every phenomenon has its opposite side, light and dark, moral and immoral. There is also a concept opposite to God. Intuitively, we all feel that the main thing in our life is our relationship with God. And so, we are afraid to make a mistake. Maybe this is the reason why people are afraid to listen about God. This is because the concept of God has very many distortions. So, how do we understand the word God? Many people think that God is a being that lives in a temple, a church, a mosque, or a pagoda. They suppose that all connected with God are mainly related to the matters of religions that exist now on the earth, like Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, and other religions, and so they think that perhaps God lives somewhere there. We must notice that all the people who live on planet Earth have different levels of consciousness. In fact, the word God will have a different meaning for every person. Each of us will have our own understanding of God and our own idea of this great concept. Contemporary science, in its advanced areas, including quantum physics, tells us that there is a universal law that controls everything in this universe, and that all things are interconnected. This means that at some level, all of us are connected with each other and the whole universe. Each level of consciousness has its own understanding of God. There is a level at which people need some kind of guardianship. So it is good for such a person to believe in God within the limits of the religion to which his family or kin belong. But along with the development of man, the idea of God becomes wider than any religious dogma or concept. An individual understands that God lives just a few centimeters under his palm, placed on his heart area. At the next level of understanding, a person believes that he is just a small cell of a huge organism consisting of the manifested universe and the unrevealed universe, and that this whole universe is the body of God. Each of us is just a tiny part of God. This concept of God has already been proven by contemporary science. We know that throughout the history of humanity, wise men always came to the world to give their understanding of God. Then, new religions appeared based on their teachings. These wise men also gave laws and regulations to the world. We can see that these laws and regulations were not accidental. As we can see, according to the religions, these laws represent the same idea of a moral law. It talks about the devotion to God, respect towards your parents. It also teaches not to kill and steal. It tells us about chastity and a moral way of living in all the spheres of life. Thus, we can see the general direction that humanity had to follow according to many wise men that lived thousands of years ago. But then the law of karma and the law of reincarnation were taken away from many religions. And this is a dual world. There is a constant opposition of two forces, good and evil. So thanks to the evil forces, people forgot the law of karma in many religions. What for? If we do not understand that every action in this world leads to its result within this or the next life or lives, Then what? Then anything is acceptable. Kill, steal, lie, and there will be no recompense for this. Why was it so necessary to take away the law of reincarnation? If we do not understand that this is not the only life that we have, and we will live some other lives, what is the point in doing good things and treating nature carefully? Just take everything from life to get pleasure. The main problems of society are caused by the fact that we stopped noticing God. So we have all the problems we are facing now. We have organized a movement that in Russian is called or the morality movement. What is the meaning of the word? In English, it is morality. It is a purely Russian word that consists of 4 parts. The first part of the word, nrav, means manner, character, or human nature. That is the totality of your soul's virtues. The second part of the word, stv, can read trunk, like a tree trunk. The third part of the word, en, is the name of God. Some people that are living in the territory of Russia have this name of God in their legends and myths. According to those legends, God created everything, the earth and the universe. Ost, the last part of the word, means base or spine. Therefore, the whole Russian term means the fundamentals of a human and the connection of human nature with God. In other words, it means God within a human or divinity within a human. So the Russian meaning of this term includes the meaning of connection with God. When we started to translate the name of the movement into other languages, we faced big difficulties. There is an English word, moral, but in fact it comes from a Latin word, moralitas, and this term has spread. However, it means just a set of norms and rules. It does not speak about the connection with the world of God. In German, we found a perfect word, Sittlichkeit, which has the same meaning as our Russian term. However, native Germans do not understand the true meaning of this word. Moreover, this word frightened them, as it also has a negative meaning of limitation of freedom. Only one person mentioned that this word can mean the purity of thoughts. Other people failed to explain the true meaning of this word. That is why we use the word morality in German. Although this term does not contain the meaning of connection with God, it is understandable for people. Actually, morality and ethics are absolutely meaningless if they do not mean connection with God. We suffer from all the problems of modern society because we lost this connection with the divinity. Let's look at the result of living without God, illustrated in several spheres of human life. Let's look at the sphere of education and child upbringing as we devote our second Congress to children. Long ago, thousands of years ago, there was a civilization of the Golden Age that was described in the Indian book called the Upanishads. It says that children younger than 7 to 8-year-olds were raised within a family to get the fundamentals of a family life and traditions. Then a child was sent to a monastery, a cloister, to get education. Parents did not have any access to the child until he was 25 years old. This means that people who were saints, monks, and masters gave the child knowledge. The knowledge concerned morality, obedience to the moral law, control of the sexual energy, and the ability to raise this energy to the higher chakras. So, 17 years of a person's life since childhood were dedicated to this, and the basis of the education was morality. Then, at the age of 25, the person was allowed to marry. Both young men and women were virgin until this age. Then there was a very crucial moment of life, the conception of a spiritual son. It was a ritual when a man and a woman had a chance and a time during which they dedicated all their virtues to the conception of a child. And all the accrued potential of those 17 years of their spiritual life was directed at once to the semen for their coming firstborn. Just imagine the huge reserves of health, strength, and spiritual endurance that a child possessed. That approach to raising children was extremely different in comparison with the one we have now. Now there is a debate going on about the appropriate age at which it is better to give a child an understanding of sexual behavior. In Latvia, they say it is necessary to start teaching about it in a kindergarten at that early age. But we understand that they will not teach children morality. What will happen then? In fact, this will be the corruption of morals. Conception of a child is the basis. Now, the idea that is introduced and developed in society is the age at which people can start having sex, and that the sex of your partner is really not important, and that is inculcated in the society. It is possible to kill people in the war. It is possible to kill them with the help of GMOs. But the easiest thing is to prevent them from reproducing. In 25 years, we can have a desert in any country, as there will be no people. Look at the diagram of degradation. If the conception was unconscious, the child will lack a huge amount of health and spirituality. Then, the period of pregnancy is very important. The food that a mother-to-be eats, her spiritual practices during the pregnancy, whether she talks to her child, her mood and state. The future of a child depends on all these things. The next point is upbringing. In our opinion, good upbringing is provided in the family. But then, a child starts attending a kindergarten, a school, and then getting information on the internet. How can we be sure that the people who teach our children are reliable and can provide good education? The fact that they got a diploma or bought it gives no guarantee of their spiritual level. What things do they teach children? Is it possible that the things they teach will outweigh our attempts to save the children from the negativity promoted in society? Let's look at the way of living. Junk food, television, wrong patterns, alcohol, drugs, living in the conditions of cities. What is the outcome? Degradation and extinction. Each successive generation becomes sick and is weaker than the previous generation. And in some cases, you do not have to read books to learn about it. Just look at the history of your family. Which diagram is positive? The one that leads to prosperity and well-being. It includes conscious conception, careful and conscious pregnancy, right nurturing and upbringing, good education, and a healthy way of living. As a result, we have prosperity and well-being. But our society does not deal with this. Because it is turned away from God, and the goals of society are completely opposite. Let's look at another example. The mass media. Our mass media has not provided us with reliable information for quite a long time. Any article or any video news is paid for, and it is presented to us as it is paid. No one even thinks that it does not correspond to the divine standard, or that the lies and slander pouring on us from the mass media create big karma. Nobody really thinks about it because people are making money just from the news. That is the way the mass media, being paid, spreads fear in people and sets entire nations and people against each other. One of the basic teachings given by the Masters of Wisdom is a teaching about the changing of consciousness. What enters our consciousness settles on the physical plane sooner or later. If our consciousness is constantly imbued with some negativity against a nation, national communities, religion, or something else, then sooner or later, when a critical percentage of the population consuming that negative information is exceeded, it settles on the physical plane in the form of war, hatred, and actually leads to murders. I am not going to give examples from modern history. But we use the example of Tsarist Russia of 1917. When the image of the Tsar bloodsucker had been seen for several decades, and in 1917, people joyfully overthrew the Tsar and then killed him the following year. How did it happen? First, an improper image was seeded in people's consciousness. Then those people were ready to kill other people for their particular class affiliation. How did it all end? 10 million completely innocent people were killed during the Civil War. 10 million. In 1 year, 5 times more people were killed than the entire population of Latvia. Of these 10 million, only 800,000 were so-called the White Gardists and the Red Gardists. The rest, more than 9 million, were ordinary people. Ordinary peasants, ordinary landowners and workers. Here is how it works. Those who know the law of karma, they understand that the action will be followed by a consequence. One murder begets other murders. And then there was the Second World War, which took even more lives, 20 million. And then there was a wave of repressions and dispossession of the farmers, which also took several million victims. Thus, one murder begets other murders. This is the result of the work of the mass media, or rather, their detachment from God. Let's look at the following aspect of our life: politics. Are there people who are engaged in politics? And why are there no people who are engaged in politics? Because we are talking about morality, right? Have you ever thought that the people who run the states on the conscience of which millions of human lives rely are not interested in morality? What is our society coming to? Another aspect of our lives is food. All of us buy products, mostly in a store. What motivates the people who make these products, who store and package them? Profit. Not caring for our good health, but profit. Accordingly, those products that are on the store shelves are enriched with GMO, flavor enhancers, sweeteners, baking powder, and carcinogens that have the taste, color, and aroma similar to natural, and we eat all this. When we eat all this, we become what we eat. What health can we have if we eat something that is not really food, but is called by names as before? For example, cheese, milk, candy, cookies. It is just poison. Thus our mind is weakening without receiving natural food. And we cease to distinguish and to be guided in life, taking the illusion that we see on TV for reality. We are losing our distinction, and eventually we are losing our soul. Fundamentally, there are only two ideologies in the world we live in. One ideology is the ideology of a consumerist society which reigns in the world today, and the second ideology is the divine ideology. There is no party, no politician, no country in the world that would stand up for the divine view and the divine law. No country, no party in the world. We know that the world that has withdrawn itself from God is doomed to death. It is like a cancer that affects humans. If the tumor is not removed, it will take away all the reserves of the organism, and the organism will die. It is the same for our consumerist society, which lives only in order to get something, and get different kinds of pleasure and enjoyment from life. Our parasitic society is like a cancer. Everything in our society is done to ensure that people stop thinking about God, and that the very concept of God is forgotten and acquires a negative connotation, like the word Sittlichkeit in German. We have said that this word means morality. Modern Germans perceive this good word almost as a curse, as something that attempts to limit their freedom. And now, when we start talking about God, in many circles of society, it is also perceived as something negative. In a few years, the younger generation will perceive the word God as something that limits their freedom. If we are not going to do anything in order to return God in our lives, we may not have much time left for living. In fact, our society is deprived of any freedom of choice. We obediently go wherever we are driven by the mass media and those who pay for it. We do not have any freedom. We are doomed. if we do not return God into our lives. Absolutely everything is aimed only at the fact that we may not think about God, about the soul, about mercy, compassion, morality, honor, dignity. When I was younger, our country produced very good postcards for Happy Birthday. Look, a bunny gives a bear birthday flowers and fruits. And here a dog is talking nicely with a boy. There were many examples of such postcards. These are the postcards from my childhood. I was born in the middle of the last century. What images are replicated to our children now? Is this different? Yes, this is quite different. Let's compare the postcards for Happy New Year. This is the card from my childhood. What do we see now? Do you like it? When you go into the internet to look for a birthday card or a Happy New Year card, you discover that 90% of them are cards with such ugly images, and I did not choose the worst and take the first available. If a frog is placed in boiling water, it will jump out. But if the frog is heated slowly in the water, in the end, after some time, it will be boiled. The same thing is happening to us. Our life is changing the guidelines towards immorality very slowly, millimeter by millimeter, each year. This happens for decades or even centuries, and we do not even notice it. A few years will pass and we will be boiled like this frog. The ancients urged us to be very careful about the changing of the rhythm of music and to the style of music itself. Why did they do that? Music has a great impact on the human body. If we listen to the wrong kind of music every day, we will be changed. And this will affect our state and everything that surrounds us. What kind of music do people listen to now? Can this be called music? I have been living in the hotel for 2 days, and I have been listening to this music all the time. Maybe I will stay 2 more days, but not longer than that. People listen to this music from morning to evening every day. Maybe they have no soul. Maybe they are boiled like that frog. 90% of what surrounds us in our lives does not correspond to the divine patterns. All of these patterns which we constantly absorb in the form of advertising, in the form of music, postcards, in the form of movies and TV programs, all of this gradually changes us. And we forget about God. and there is no politician who will remind us of God. Look at the kind of fashion that surrounds us. The best fashion, there is a feeling that people are dressed from the garbage. And people seriously buy these things for big money and wear them. Exactly the same way as there are two ideologies, the consumerist society and the divine ideology. In the same way, there are two types of people in our society. Some people who believe in God and others who do not believe in God. Those people who do not believe in God think that they live once. The law of karma, the law of reincarnation, and the moral law does not exist for them. They are allowed to do whatever they want. They need to take everything possible from this life, all the pleasures, all the delights of this life, and it does not matter how these pleasures can be obtained. With the help of theft, lies, slander, or other means. The society ceased to control all areas of human activity. Advertising, music, art, books, movies, education, health, food production. If we take any area of human activity, no one controls it. People do not understand what is happening and how it affects the death of the human soul. The word morality is inextricably linked with the best human qualities: love, mercy, compassion, virtue. I suggest that you watch a short film, which in my opinion, with no doubt shows the qualities of mercy and compassion.
И в конце концов ты поймешь,
You see,
что
in the
все
end,
это
it is
происходило между
between
тобой
you
и
and
Богом.
God.
И
It was
никогда
never
это не были
between you
отношения между
and
тобой
them
и ним.
anyway.
Всегда
Everything in this world
все определяли в этом мире
is always determined by the best
лучшие представители
representatives of human
человеческого общества.
society.
Я очень надеюсь,
And I really hope
что каждый из нас в оставшееся небольшое время сделает
that each of us will do everything in his power
от него зависящее,
within the remaining short time
чтобы этот мир
to let this world
жил.
live.
Спасибо.
Thank you.
Еще фильм чудесный. Посмотрите, пожалуйста, Литва сделала для вас.